You read about and see about nuclear problems only when you have a catastrophe. No catastrophe, no news, people think everything is okay. It's not okay. It's a danger every day. The nuclear danger is not only the bomb, it is also the very beginning of the nuclear chain. Uranium has to be extracted from the ground, and the milling, the taking the uranium from the rocks, tremendous amounts of tailings remain, which are also radioactive, and people who live there are victims of this radiation, and you have high cancer rates.
To destroy the land is to destroy the...
I got involved in putting together a world conference which was called the World Uranium Hearing in 1992 in Salzburg, Austria. Roughly 100 people from around the world, from each continent, testified about the impact of this everyday suffering. And it became very clear after the hearing, it is very important to break the isolation which surrounds those people, because the isolation helps to exploit them, and also to find a way that they can communicate and find a way that this, what's going on every day, can become news. And that's how the idea was born, to create an award and honor the people who are fighting and who don't give up. We spread the word that this award is being given out, and we got about 20 nominations, all moving biographies, and 4 people were selected. It's not necessarily individuals. For example, Yvonne Margarula, who receives the award for resistance, receives it on behalf of her tribe.
The red marks on trees tell us it's Mirarr land. The markings are sacred, ageless. Kakadu National Park is a UNESCO World Heritage Site where the Jabiluka uranium mine is proposed. $8 billion uranium lying beneath the red earth. Yvonne Margarula is the Mirarr senior traditional owner. She says, no way. The Mirarr know what they are facing. The Ranger uranium mine has already poisoned their sacred land. The search is for turtles across the cracked earth. The Mirarr people live totally connected to the natural world. Their land is sacred. To lose one's land is to lose one's spirit. The Mirarr people are on a journey to halt the rape of their spirit and their land.
Wan baraweng wan aya bolk nan. Wan nga dari ger ngari bolk nan. Malga dari jaran bangkam. Barigaru. Wan punya nyuk ngaringun. Pada ringunan bang wan nyari dowen. Kan bunat pere.
The outback menu: magpie goose, long-necked turtles, water lilies, barramundi fish, and spicy malaloika leaves. The Mirar's traditional food. Clean water is a treasure for Yvonne Maragula's people. Uranium and sulfur have already contaminated Magala Creek. Yvonne named other poisoned wetlands: Mudgeonberry, Namakananga, Mula, and Ubia. The coming generations are threatened. If mining begins at Jabiluka, the Mirar's sacred land will be transformed into a radioactive dump. The world's most ancient culture, poisoned by the atomic age.
Bolki me bukan di bolki jawanan biala bari jara bari boltuk ke. Jabuluk ko bari boltuk ke. Jang bari jang ware won. Wan an bangkare wan kan bunat bere ari dowen. Iman kai me bari boltuk yang anan biga. Wan mu bari jalbo mun ge bu ku wan ari bongunan bo ari dowen. Jajen gabunan me gabunat bere bari.
Yvonne Margarula hopes that UNESCO will place Kakadu on the in danger list of World Heritage Sites. But the struggle of the Mirarr is not only a fight to turn Northern Australia into a nuclear-free zone. Only as keepers of their own land are the Mirarr keepers of their own future. Inscribed on stone, their ancestors remind them of their guardian role.
What is that? Same like when we say no, kayaki, mereka bari bol karung. They're not mining that country. We say no, kayaki.
Here, countless generations of hands have met as one hand. And today, Yvonne Margarula's hand sends out but one message: stop Jabiluka.
Then we have, in the solution category, we have an engineer from India who developed a concept and a scheme to be independent energy-wise and produce electricity with biomass.
My name is Hari Sharan. I come from a small town in North India. I finished my engineering degree in India and went to Manchester in England to do a PhD on combustion and heat transfer. After I had finished my dissertation there, I came to Switzerland to work with a Swiss company called Sulzer, which at that time was the leading company for very large conventional power stations. I lived in Switzerland for 17 years. I was the manager of research and development in Sulzer when I was asked to go back to India.
this watt that you have got is derived by dividing this by this. So if you... In the Indian situation today, even from the point of view of the reality, the total amount of energy which the Indian society uses today, not even 3% of that energy comes from nuclear power. But almost double that energy comes from cow dung, which is the basic raw material that a villager uses today for cooking his food. So we decided that it was essential to build power stations on a commercial basis in the villages of the developing country to demonstrate to the policymakers and to the investors that these things really work. And this is what we found in a place called Orcha. Orcha is an old center in central India, and our partner Development Alternatives was going to build a small center for micro enterprises to make handmade paper, to make some materials for the building industry for the villages. And we decided together with them to build a power station which would use a local weed for generating the power, and this power would be utilized to create jobs for the villages in these micro enterprises. So local villagers cut it, they put it on a bullock cart, the bullock cart brings that biomass to the power station, and at the power station they are chopped, and these small pieces of biomass are then laid out on the ground in the sun to dry. Now these small pieces of dry biomass is put at the top of the gasifier manually, and the biomass then gradually starts going down. Now the design is a very simple cylinder, in one part of which it is lined with ceramic where a high temperature zone is maintained. It produces some gas. This gas is drawn through this hot bed of charcoal, where all the tar that is generated in the first period is burnt out, and what comes out is very hot gas. We have to cool this gas and wash it. So we spray water, and this cooled gas is then sucked into the engine so that we reduce the diesel consumption of this engine by 80%. So 80% of the energy comes from the gas from the gasifier, 20% we still supply as diesel engine, and then the engine runs like that. This power station supplies electricity to a handmade paper factory, and it produces paper, good quality, beautiful paper with wastes from the textile industry and from other sources which come there. In other places, it will be a rice mill to husk the rice. In other places, it will be a flour mill to produce flour. It will be oil expeller. It can be a small workshop which repairs and maintains these things. So you have to have micro enterprises which meet the local needs of the people to create jobs. The women, when they come to work here, they bring their children with them. So there has to be a system of the children being a part of the total working atmosphere. At lunchtime, everyone has to have half an hour of compulsory education. So they all go and learn to read, to write, to sign their names, to do simple sums, and to understand what's happening. So what was also done was that we also have built a gasification plant in Switzerland, which is identical to the one which was built in Orcha. It was built in India, it was put in a container, sent to Switzerland with 2 technicians and 2 engineers who in Switzerland installed this power station, commissioned it, handed it over to the Swiss technicians and went back. And the purpose of this Swiss power station was to test the Swiss wood whether the same results which had been obtained in India could also be obtained in Switzerland. So that is also the idea behind building these power stations in Orcha, to demonstrate that by this type of a South-North cooperation, it is also to the advantage of the industrialized countries like Switzerland and Germany and Austria to work together with the South to build these type of power stations.
And then we have Raúl Montenegro. He's a professor of biology who for over 20 years worked with the government and with grassroots initiatives and educated the public.
Cordoba is the second largest city of Argentina. It's an old city. We have people which is strongly involved with matters linked with environment and nuclear issues. My name is Raúl Montenegro. I'm a biologist and I work in FUNAM, Environment Defense Foundation, which is an NGO which work in a lot of fields. One of the most important is nuclear issues. Our aim, our goal is to have a future free of nuclear. This is, I think, our main goal. One of the main goals of UNAM, of our organization, is not to act as spoke organization of citizens. The role is to transmit information, and thus the people will be the spokesperson of themselves. Our strategy to work is not to work alone. Thus we work with citizens and we work with a lot of NGOs and organizations. Thus we make permanently coalitions with NGOs, with churches, with grassroots organizations. And of course we work with NGOs like ours that include activists like Pirucha or like Carolina, which are two very active people in this field.
Raúl's attraction to the people and his ability to communicate effectively lies not only in his personality, but also and above all, because his work has been constant and consequential.
He is very aware of each of the problems and of their impact. He knows what can be done given the difficulties of different situations. What can we do? Can we do something big? Can we do something small? From him, I have learned optimism. When we have problems, it is possible to give them a solution, and the environmentalists and us as a people have strength to solve them.
This is the Cordoba plant for the production of uranium dioxide. It's a plant of the Atomic Energy Agency of Argentina. This plant, after 10 years of battle, a strong battle, finally the Atomic Energy Agency of Argentina decided to close next year, in 1999. The problem that we have now is that this plant is containing inside more than 30,000 tons of low-level radioactive waste.
Montenegro's activity in denouncing the nuclear industry has been permanent and has had a large impact, precisely because it has not been a governmental activity, but an activity that has been backed up with the confidence from the entire population. In this way, it has had a political effect, but above all, an educational impact.
In fact, our nuclear power plan, our nuclear program, was developed in Argentina through military governments and not by civilian governments. The main strategy is to work with media. It means that we need to introduce our messages, our news inside media, because it's the contact between the reality of the problem and the society. When we detect a violation to existing rules or laws in Argentina that involve nuclear issues, thus we present the case in the prosecutors and we bring to them information. And a lot of time we presented this kind of case to Graciela López de Filoñuc, which is one of our prosecutors in Córdoba.
When Raúl Montenegro makes an accusation, I give it special attention, and it's for sure that I will prosecute a criminal action because there is a basis to his accusations.
You have been targeted by people who don't like what you do and have been threatened. Can you tell me about that?
Threats are I think, very common. It's part of a struggle everywhere, and Argentina is not the exception.
This building here was used during Argentina's last dictatorship as a center for detention and torture. That's what this plaque here tells us, that people was tortured and murdered here. And it says, keep our memory alive.
You know, when you have so many years with military power that produced the kidnapping and disparition of more than 30,000 people, to be free to speak with freedom is not so easy.
So are you hopeful about the prospects of a nuclear-free world?
It's very important joining hands with different groups and people in different parts of the world to ask for a nuclear-free. If we are fighting strongly, it's because we know that we will have a nuclear-free future.
And then we have an honorary Lifetime Achievement Award, which goes to Macy Shield, an 83-year-old woman in Saskatchewan, Canada. And Saskatchewan is the capital of uranium mining in the Western world. And she, for 20 years, was also fighting and educating the public.
What is Saskatchewan's policy on uranium? How many years are those tailings going to stay there? I was 32 when I immigrated. I joined a very good organization that educated through each of us taking a subject to follow, and we would have to give a report at each meeting about what our subject was. And my subject was always international affairs. And so I sort of really, beat on this thing of peace. I belonged to the Voice of Women, just that very name, the Voice of Women. And I was thinking, yeah, I've got a voice. And I did apply that to myself, yes. But, and that was in the 60s.
She got involved specifically in the uranium issue in 1976 at the Habitat Conference in Vancouver.
I decided to go on my own. And it cost me about $500, but I think I went by bus or by train and stayed at the university. It was a most inspiring meeting of my life. We decided to send Jan to the Saskatchewan delegate to ask him what Saskatchewan's policy on uranium was. He'd let her know in 2 days. So in 2 days, and these were nightly meetings, so in 2 days, Jan came to the meeting. What happened, Jan? Did he tell you? He's flown back to Regina. Now that really sparked my interest,
She has a way of living her life that takes up a certain issue, that makes information available, that makes understanding available, that we can't all do and that we're not all interested in doing. But she is. And it's because of that commitment that she makes it possible for other people to become committed and to see things that they wouldn't otherwise see.
Alpha radiation is accepted in the highest international circles as being 20 times more biologically effective than beta or gamma radiation.
So I wonder what people in Europe would think when they come and see pictures of us here, this tiny little group, struggling against multinational corporations of the size with the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Fukushima says it will mothball the facility and the tailings pond. Tailings pond must be decommissioned. Mothballing is not good enough. If they find more high-grade ore and decide to start up again, they will have to construct a new tailings pond.
I think Maisie is driven by the struggle for justice. Fundamentally, Maisie sees the injustice of industry versus indigenous people. Maisie is a grandmother to all of us. She has such a delightful spirit about her. I think the thing that's remarkable about Maisie is how she self-educated on the issue, and then her age. I mean, she's 80, in her early 80s, and she continues to fight.
Maisie, in a quite classical Christian way, was always willing to give a helping hand, to share food, to share a bed, to help out particularly young people. And she, in that sense, she was always there.
I've been doing this for 22 years. Nearly everybody else has got burned out. Many, many people through the death have dropped off, you know. And I'm still hopeful, you know, I still believe that enough, that I continue, yeah.
Her independence, her relentless work on the details meant she was a carrier of information, and she was a connector, and she brought people from the north and the south and the cities closer together.
I mean, you're never going to have the whole truth. So you've got to go on seeking it. Yours sincerely, Maisie Shield, Concerned Citizen.
Sometimes I'm confronted with a statement like, that's not possible to end the nuclear age. But, I mean, slavery was abolished, and apartheid, the Berlin Wall came down. I mean, there are things which are possible if the vision is strong enough. And Elie Wiesel once said, we have to imagine the impossible. He meant it in a bad way, but you also can look at it in a good way. So a nuclear-free future is possible, and the award recipients are examples of it.